Welcome to another Sales Wisdom Pod. Today with us is Xenia Borzov. She is GTM at OSS Venture. So we're going to talk about sales. We're going to talk about manufacturing and the fact that OSS does help manutech, manutech startups, and I believe, like in that same bubble, the manufacturing tech hub to thrive even more. So it's on the software side of thing that is. So I'm excited to talk even a bit more about that, to talk about GTM, to talk about sales with Xenia. This podcast is brought to you by podpar.com. If you want to start, scale, be invited to a podcast, basically you can go to podpar.com to get your own pod and to learn from folks like Xenia. Podcasts are amazing. Xenia, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about OSS Venture?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Xenia, and I'm a go-to-market manager at OSS Ventures. So what we do at OSS is that we create softwares for factories to help our French industry to drive into a more digital to the what we call Industry 4.0. So we help factories to digitalize their operation using the right software, basically. And my job is to find the right go-to-market strategy for each of the startups we have. And by go-to-market, it means pretty much everything. It's basically a strategy that implies having a very strategy to approach the market, a strategy to find the right factories that we need to talk to in order to sell our product, to understand who we need to sell the product to find out who is our ICP, to find out what is the best business model, and basically to iterate on those things to get the best go-to-market strategy.
In terms of GTM, you've occupied like various positions in that role in various startups. So what's the specific GTM strat that you're using for OSS to make sure that you guys stay on track?
I'm not sure we have a perfect go-to-market strategy because it's based on, it's basically a methodology and it's a mindset. So basically what we do is that we try to have the same mindset when we start a new GTM, but every single GTM is of course different. For example, you won't sell a software designed for SMB the same way than a software designed for bigger companies. You won't have the same go-to-market strategy if you just have a SaaS or you have a SaaS-enabled marketplace. So it's very different. And what we don't have any magic recipe to have the perfect GTM. What we do is that we have a specific mindset. We know that we need to iterate very fast. So we understand that in order to succeed, we need to fail several times just to understand what is not the right thing to do, which will help us to design the right strategy. So we have one of our values is basically fail, learn, and succeed, which is also part of the GTM strategy. We also try to be very data oriented because we track our results. And when we create our iteration, we try to track basically everything just in order to be able to analyze everything the right way. And we also try to note everything down, to write everything down, to document as much as possible. So basically we have some deliverables. So we have one-pagers just that which will be a summary of the go-to-market strategy. And those one-pagers, for example, we have a V1, a V2, a V3, and we always keep iterating on that. Then we'll have the same strategy with pretty much everything in a go-to-market strategy, on marketing, on positioning, on the sales speech, on the cold call speech, for example. So we basically spend a lot of time to iterate. And the idea for us is to give the right key to the startup when she leaves the studio. So the startup can continue iterating, but she has good basis just to have a team and to have a good strategy in order to grow very fast.
Right, and you're probably experimenting hundreds or tens of methods, GTM channels at the same time. Which one have you seen work best nowadays?
I think for manufacturing, it's a very specific sector, and what is the, for me, is the best go-to-market strategy so far, like the best channel is cold calling. I think with cold calling, you can very quickly confront your idea to the market and you can understand basically if your pitch is the right one, if your approach is the right one, if you talk to the right person, so you can iterate on your pitch, on your ICT at the same time, on your value proposition. And to me, cold calling is really very powerful, especially in the beginning. And then, of course, you have cold emailing, you have cold LinkedIn outreach. But to me, my favorite one, I think, especially when I start with a new startup, I do a lot of cold calling because it's the best way just to confront even your idea to the market. And now at OSS, we see a phenomenon that we start to do cold calling very, very fast and very early. And for example, we have one startup we have in our studio, which is about waste management for industrial. Basically, they do a lot of cold calling. And on my side, with all my startups, I try to start cold calling as soon as possible. And of course, to do it with the founders, because it's very important for them to just to see the market, to understand, and thus we can create a founder-led sales strategy, which for us is really a priority right now. To have this mindset for our founders.
Yeah, and in the manufacturing sector, I guess people pick up the phone a bit more. Must be like an assistant slash a secretary that picks the phone up, and the phone number is easily scrapable on the website. Let's call it that way. How do you measure if an initiative is successful or not? For example, in cold email, open rate, reply rate, successful meeting rate, and closing rate. On the phone, like what are your metrics? Let's say that you did a good job at scraping all these phone numbers and you see that no one answers. Well, is it like, oh, this niche does not work with phone numbers? How do you go with that?
Just we're pretty lucky because they all work. They like the phone. I don't know. They have a lot of emails, so it's they're a bit scared also about all the digital stuff, the scraping, the mass emailing. They don't like that. And on the phone, you basically they have a phone, they have a mobile phone, so it's easier. And then once you got the right time to call them, and for example, in manufacturing, it can be early in the morning, it can be at 8 a.m. because they really start working very early. And for us, it's a sweet spot. And then, of course, we're going to track basically we're going to track how many of them just picked up the phone, and then we'll measure if our pitch is good. If, for example, starting for 50% a cold call to meeting is a good ratio once they picked up the phone, of course. So for me, it's a good cold call strategy is like 50-75% from phone answer to meeting booked.
Right. And how do you go with combining and going multi-touch for these methods? Do you go cold, then cold email, then LinkedIn, generally speaking? Is that how you typically deploy a campaign?
Yeah, we do a lot of multi-touchpoint campaign. We use, for example, Lemlist or La Grosse Machine, which is the French equivalent, also like with a very French name, which with a different positioning. And so basically we create really complex flows with emails, with LinkedIn, and also what I'm testing right now is just sending physical postcards, handwritten postcards, but like handwritten with a robot, which is very like I like this idea. But it's what we do. We try to have different touch points, and now we're testing something really new, which consists of cold calling, email, and physical card they received at the factory.
Right. And what manufacturing niches are you seeing that are working better than others? Are there any sub niches like paper or chemical or energy and oil?
For us, we don't target any specific niche because we try to create the most universal software for factories. Of course, now we have a very cool startup in the studio, which is Energix, which is basically the energy transition for manufacturers, so they can they can try to control the energy consumption, like also with the new normal, which is a very high electricity and gas prices. And this startup, it's a bit particular because here we have a niche. We need to target industries that have machines that have energy-verse processes. So it's not a niche, but of course we'll have a specific niche for each startup. We also have, for example, an ERP, a no-code ERP, which is Bonks, which is really a revolution in terms of ERPs. But since an ERP is very complex, of course, they started to target very particular factories. So they started with textile, with recycling, because it's very easy to map on Bonks. But this is a choice, and then we try. Basically, we iterate also on the niches we target, but we don't, at OSS, we try not to focus on a specific niche because we try to create the most universal products as possible. But when we do the go-to-market, of course, we start with a niche because it's easier. Once you have a client, you have a use case, you can say, oh, I'm working with this client who's famous, and then, of course, it helps. But when we start our products, the idea is not to focus on a specific niche.
You also advise a bunch of startups. What skills does a great advisor need to acquire in order to really help a startup?
In terms of qualities, in terms of mindset,
Any skills
or most skills. Oh, I think when in my job, especially, I think a good skill is to work very fast. So be able to organize my time, just to be very efficient on what I do, just so I do things that have impact very fast and I can test. So this is the test and learn mindset. Also the idea that if I fail, it's a good thing, because failure at OSS is something we consider as a lesson, but it's important to track the test the right way so it can become a lesson. Otherwise, it's just going to be a fail. So this is a very important thing. Also, to have a lot of humility, because when you work in manufacturing, especially, you need to understand that these are hard jobs, and basically what we do, the reason we wake up for every morning is that because we help people in factories just to have we try to make their life a bit easier, and we need to have a lot of humility. So we can't just go in a factory to be very startup-y, like, hey, what's up? We need to have a lot of respect, and I think humility is a very important quality for just with the founders, with also factories. I think it's very important, and also to know that basically what we do is we try to change lives. It's important, but we start very, very small, and every time we start something, it's a new subject. So I'm a newbie at everything. I'm a newbie at least 4 times a year. Once I change startups, I need to appropriate myself in a whole new topic, and I need to be ready for that. And I think it's an important quality.
I see also that you're a member of Women in Sales. Why did you join that community/mastermind group?
So basically, it was funded by one of the founders is a girl from my school. So of course I just saw one of her LinkedIn posts, and I decided to join. And for me, it's important because, like, of course, there is no. It's very important to when I arrived at OSS, a lot of role models I have at OSS in terms of sales, especially, are men. And for me, it's also important to have another perspective of sales, more from a woman's side. And I think we all have our different, we're different. And I think we should, for me, it was a great opportunity to understand basically how women have their own tips just to be better sales, better go-to-market managers. And for me, it's really, it's very rich. There are a lot of interesting people in that group. And for me, I'm a bit sad that there is not that much women in tech, even in tech, and even more in manufacturing. And I think it's sad. So for me, it's also a way to show that there are a lot of interesting things to be done. Honestly, on my side, I never thought I would love going to factories. I would love manufacturing. And now, every time I go to a factory, I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed. I see people working. I understand like basically understand how things are built, and it's very interesting. And what I want to do, I think it's an important sector in the economy, and I try to spread awareness also among women because sometimes women, they think, yeah, tech is not for me, industry is not for me, and it's sad because it's for everyone.
What are your main 3 objectives finishing this year off?
Things like, yeah, one first objective is, of course, to manage to bring my startup, the startups I'm in charge of, to the right level, to basically give them the right keys so they can basically fly with their own wings. And I'm always happy to see them. I follow their success stories, and I'm really proud when I see that they manage to grow even more. Then, of course, a second objective is to never stop iterating, to keep going with this velocity I have, and we all have at OSS, and which is very inspiring. So keep going with the velocity. And the third one will be, of course, never stop learning new things, never stop trying to open my also to learn a lot of new things, to open myself to new things, and try to also break my mental barriers and test things that I think, like, test really new and interesting things anyone have tested before. I think it's a good one.
Nice. Where can people find out more about you, Xenia?
On LinkedIn, I try to post regularly about GTM, about some tips, about some also some ideas. I share a lot of things about our startups and about daily life at OSS.
There you go. And I am Charles, host of Sales Wisdom Podcast. You can find me at on LinkedIn at Charles Cormier, straight up on LinkedIn. That was Xenia Borzov.